What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Today, guys, are seeing the title of the video. We're breaking down our second and third year players who we think have the potential to break out. We kind of done this a few times over the last few off seasons, and we're bringing it back. And we're going to bring up a few names here. Now, we're not bringing up every name from players who are second and third year guys. We're just talking about a few of them who we think could break out and have the potential to. And there might be a name or two in here from you guys that might trigger some people because you might think that they've already broken out. But just hear our explanation, and then you'll kind of see where we're coming from. So, Cody, let's just go ahead and hop into it here. Let's go ahead and go with the second year players going into this next year. And we'll start with the first one, and that was the 2021 first round draft pick for the Colts this last year, and that was Kwity Paye. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I thought Kwity had a solid rookie season. I mean, PFF rated him as one of the best rookie pass rushers, defensive ends out there. But, I mean, you look at just from a pure number standpoint, and he only had 4 sacks, right? So you got to think that's going to go up, especially now with the new coaching staff. And, we don't know who right now the defensive line coach is going to be, but you think they're going to get a teacher in there and hopefully can help develop him better than Brian Baker was able to. So I thought Kwity had a solid rookie season. He had his ups, he had his downs. I don't think he was the best pass rusher as a rookie. So I think he can definitely grow in that area. And we knew he was an unfinished product when we did draft him. So, I mean, we said it there. You said it, Derek. You said people need to pump the brakes because some people were saying he's going to have 8 to 10 sacks. And we're just like, I don't know about that. We kind of think it might be on the lower end to start, just because it's so hard to let alone draft pass rushers. I mean, and even in like the late first round, it's even harder. So, yeah, I mean, I think Kwity had a solid rookie season. He showed flashes for sure. But I still think he's got a lot of room for growth. And I know we're going to talk about the next guy too. The same deal here. But yeah, I mean, I like Kwity a lot. I think he has the potential to be a really good defensive end for the Colts for the next couple of years for the foreseeable future. So yeah, I mean, he's a guy with tremendous talent. I think his ceiling is huge. It's through the roof, man. And so I like Kwity quite a bit. I think he's definitely a part of what the Colts want to do in their future. And I'm excited to see how he continues to develop because I think he's talent-wise a very talented player.
Yeah, and what gives me the impression that I think he'll break out is the fact that, later on in the year, you started to see Kwity Paye do more things with getting pass rush, getting more consistent pass rush. You saw him making a few more plays as the year went on. And that's what impresses me the most because it's like, it's one thing to see him jump right off the screen, right off the bat. And then as the season goes on, you see him just disappear, right? That wasn't Kwity Paye. When the Colts started getting those wins, Kwity Paye really started to become a more effective pass rusher. And of course, I said it. We had to pump the brakes a little bit on the expectations for Kwity at the start. It's an unfinished product. And, he's a young guy. He's going to have to get used to playing left tackles and right tackles who are better than what the competition that he faced. And, he had to deal with some injuries along the way, and with the fact that, he hasn't quite done everything that he could to get the moves where they might be in the future. The Colts coaching staff have said that they really liked his development throughout training camp and throughout everything else. I think that that's going to continue to happen under Gus Bradley and whoever else he wants to bring in at defensive line for the coach. And I think Gus Bradley does a good job of getting his defensive linemen involved in different schemes that help get that sort of thing to happen. So ultimately, again, do you see Kwity Paye getting 6, 7, 8 sacks this year? Yeah, I think that I definitely could see a 6, 7 sack season for Kwity Paye. That's going to be an improvement. He was already really good at getting pass rush, even if it wasn't a sack, getting that pressure. I want to see him continue to do that. And I think with another off season to work on his moves, I think that he is going to be a good guy.
Mm-hmm. He's already a really stout run defender. Like he's really good at that. So yeah, I think he just got to develop that counter move. That's kind of been the big thing for Kwity is like he just got to develop that a little bit more. So, thinking he's going to with under Gus Bradley, I mean, he's gotten guys. If you look kind of at Gus Bradley's resume, he's gotten some guys like Max Crosby, the most recent one. who really, I mean, credit Max Crosby's a great player, but
Yeah.
he's also gotten a lot out of those guys as well. So
Yeah.
I think definitely the sky's the limit for him and the next guy we'll talk about here for this offensive line. And that's what this Colts team needs. You know, they need a guy or two that are going to really make the quarterback's life not comfortable back there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we might as well go to the next one, and that was the next pick in the 2021 draft, and that was Dio Odangbo. Basically, we only saw him for half a season, Cody. He was only there for half a season because he was still dealing with an ACL injury. And, you know, we know it that sometimes, especially for guys at defensive end who have to get that get off, and that ACL can sometimes hamper you at the start of your of the season because you're still trying to get used to basically the momentum and the movement of everything again. You know, you're still trying to get that down, and you know, it kind of hampered Dio a little bit at that point. You know, thankfully he was able to make a few plays here and there for them when he could. You know, just ultimately, again, was a guy that was dealing with the injury. You know, he was far behind everybody because he had over half a season where he wasn't able to practice with everyone and get that same experience as Kwity Paye. So this next season, we'll see a lot more of what the Colts are hoping to see out of Dio Odangbo. And I mean, obviously not much to look on. So you would assume that any kind of playing time that Dio is going to get this season will help him to basically break out, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense that Dio will have a season that will give us a better understanding of what kind of draft pick he was.
Yeah, just to clarify, I believe it was an Achilles injury, not an ACL injury that he suffered. Because I remember it was similar to Eric Fisher's, and people were saying, well, why is Eric Fisher returning week 2, and why is Dio not returning until midseason? And we talked about that, you know, different levels of, you know, recovery and stuff from the NFL to college. So just wanted to clarify there. But yeah, it's still a significant injury, obviously. But yeah, I mean, Dio's physically a lot more gifted than Kwity Paye. Let's just be honest. Like, he's one of the most physically gifted prospects in a long time.
Yes.
But we all know that just because you're physically gifted doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate, you know, to being a great NFL player. Now, obviously, you know, Kwity had a lot more preparation to going into this season, like he talked about. Then Dio, he had a full training camp. He had the whole off season, you know, to kind of get into this Colts defensive scheme. And Dio really didn't. I mean, he was there, but he wasn't able to really get physically probably in shape the way he wanted to be, you know? So you got to wonder, number one, was he even in shape his rookie year as much as he wanted to be? Yeah. And number two, was he fully 100% back from that injury? I mean, we don't know exactly, you know? We saw it hurt Eric Fisher at certain times. And that's a lot more obvious, you know, than a defensive lineman, I think, because, you know, obviously it's one-on-one matchups and stuff like that. And if you allow a sack, it's a lot more obvious than if you just don't do a whole lot. So, yeah, I mean, I think fortunately for the Colts, he's very young. He seems like he's recovered well from it. And, you know, it's exciting because, you know, it kind of feels like you're giving Gus Bradley and his defensive staff two like molds of clay that are super talented, and they can just develop these guys the way that they want to. You got to wonder if that kind of was the Colts' thought process, you know, when they last year, when they did draft these two guys, are like, you know, we don't know how long Matt Eberflus and his staff's going to be around. So, you know, when he gets a head coaching job, we're going to bring in our guy, and he's going to mold these guys into those stud pass rushers that we want and need for them to be. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I think both these guys are extremely talented. And if you love the Colts and you want to see their defensive line get better, I mean, these two guys, look no further. These two guys have so much talent and so much potential to really help cure this issue the Colts have had on their defensive line for far, far too long. And I'm excited to see what Gus Bradley does with these two guys.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'll go back to what I said in the last offseason, that I thought Dio was my favorite draft pick out of all of them, I'll be honest. I still feel that way because, you know, the potential's still there. And the mystery of it all, you know, like, is he going to become, you know, the second coming to something like, you know, what Myles Garrett became for the Cleveland Browns, you know, just that physically gifted guy. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Dio, when he was coming out of college, he was actually somewhat more physically gifted than Myles Garrett in a way. You know, Garrett's a little stronger than what Dio was, but Dio was longer and he was faster. And, you know, I mean, he's one of those guys that motor is is top notch. So, we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously, like I said, again, the last season didn't get to see much. So the likelihood of him breaking out this year is very high. Go to another player here, and that would be Kylen Granson. Had him on the show a couple times. Kylen, tight end out of SMU. We've kind of been talking about the tight end situation, like what's going to happen with, Mo Alley-Cox and with Jack Doyle. Are we going to even re-sign Mo Alley-Cox? Are we going to let Jack Doyle retire? And what's going to happen here? So, Kylen has that potential situation to step into that role of what we kind of want the Colts to be looking for and being that receiving tight end. And again, it's another one of those things where it's like, even for Kylen, I thought that his usage last year was criminally underrated in the passing game, which I don't know why, because I thought that, Kylen was supposed to be your number one receiving threat. I understand he was young and I understand that he had to learn some things, but even then, I still thought that his usage in the pass game was still underwhelming. And, there were a lot of times that Kylen Granson made some good plays in the passing game and the few times that he did get the ball. So I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that Kylen won't break out this year because I think that the Colts are going to try to look to improve on that position a little more and try to bring in some other guys. And Kylen might still get tossed to the back a little bit still because he's still trying to develop. But again, Kylen has the ability and, he has the ability to potentially be a full starting tight end for this team. If the Colts are that committed to improving the pass game, they should use Kylen a little bit more often.
I think so too. It was weird. Like they just didn't use him for the first half of the season, it seemed like. But it seemed like when they threw it to him, he would make some plays. He had a couple games in a row where they threw him a pass in a critical moment and he made a play. So I figure for a team that's really lacking in that department outside of Michael Pittman, they would have used him more at some point. But it was just a little shocking that they just kind of went away from him for whatever reason. And I would like to see his usage go up this year for sure. And honestly, I kind of look at it like if the Colts decide we trust Kylen, we want to give him more of a role, and they elect to not go get another tight end or whatever, like I would honestly be okay with that rather than wide receiver because Kylen actually has some potential, I feel like. Whereas wide receiver, outside of Pittman, I'm not really like sold on anybody. You know what I mean? So I want to see him get more of a role this next season. I really think he deserves it. He worked his butt off, and I thought that when he was called upon, he played pretty well. So, yeah, I want to see Kylen get more of an opportunity in this Colts offense in 2022. That's absolutely certain.
Let's go to the last of the second-year guys here, and we kind of threw this guy in because we know that, there's a lot of you fans out there of this guy that were wondering why, he never got to play this last year, and that is Michael Strawn. Again, Cody, this one's a mystery just because we saw in training camp, I mean, Strawn was maybe the best wide receiver in all of training camp when we saw the body of work. But again, when it came to him being one of the last guys on the depth chart, he wasn't going to get a ton of playing time unless he went onto special teams, and he didn't want to do that. And ultimately, he was a healthy scratch for practically the entire year, except for a few games. So, it's one of those things we've said, like, the Colts might have to move on from some guys this year. And do you think that he could be one of those guys that, works on his skills again this offseason, makes that bigger leap again? And you wonder if, he gets a spot on this roster going forward. I think he has the potential to. It's just a matter of where his head's at.
Yeah, and it's a matter of how does it translate to the NFL level because everybody was hyping him up, in the preseason and stuff. He was playing well, but also he wasn't playing against starters necessarily, the whole time. So you got to wonder how much of that do you think about? And he got a little bit of run early in the season, and then for whatever reason, he just kind of was inactive, didn't really do a whole lot, wasn't really shown the field for whatever reason. And so, yeah, I think it's tough for me because he's obviously physically gifted. He's obviously got a lot of those physical tools. But, the reason I think why he didn't play, and kind of from what I understand, is the fact that mean, the dude didn't play the year before either. He didn't play because of COVID. So he had been out of football for over a year at that point, and he still had to learn a lot of things. Now, the talent is there. The physical talent is there, but you got to wonder, this guy's a 7th-round pick, right? Like, how much is that going to actually translate to the NFL level? 7th-round picks are such crapshoots sometimes. Like, you can get really good players, and then you can also get players that, I mean, how many times have the Colts drafted guys in the 5th, 6th, 7th round that just haven't panned out? They're physically gifted, but they just don't pan out for whatever reason. So, I mean, for me, I'm kind of just like, I think he has a good chance to make the roster. I don't know if he's really going to make much of an impact, if I'm being completely honest, because, I mean, this dude is still very raw, very raw.
Absolutely. I agree with you. All right, let's move to the 3rd-year guys.
Well, we got one more guy here we forgot to mention that wasn't a draft pick. Deion Jackson. I just wanted to touch on him. I think that he has a potential to do something because Marlon Mack's going to be gone. I don't know if he'll be active, but I think he'll probably be our number 3 running back. But I don't know how much he's going to actually impact the game. But I think he has a good chance as well. But he was an undrafted guy. That's why we had him on we had him on the back part of our list, which is why we missed him there. So
right.
Just wanted to say that guy.
All right. So 3rd-year guys here. And this one is the one that I kind of was saying, like some of you might think that, we're stretching with this guy. And that's Julian Blackmon. Now, again, what we saw his rookie year, it was a great stepping stone. Like the guy came off of a really bad injury in the bowl game that he suffered in December of, I think it was of 2019. And then, didn't get to play throughout the whole offseason, and then came in that 2nd week of the season, and everyone was amazed that he was even back during that time. But then just came in and took the Colts defense by storm, man. I mean, he was one of the most dynamic defensive players. If it wasn't for Chase Young having just a phenomenal season, I mean, Julian Blackmon might have possibly been Defensive Rookie of the Year that year had Chase Young not done what he did. So, I mean, Julian Blackmon, even though, he was injured and, was kind of out of football shape because he really didn't get a chance to be in that kind of shape when he first came in, he really did a fantastic job. And then obviously this year was supposed to take that big leap, got hurt again, and had to miss over half the season. So we're going to see what he is going to be made of for this next year. But I think that this guy will break out because, again, going into that 3rd year, I thought this last season he was already taking those good steps to be a more efficient guy in coverage. And I think the experience thing for him is just what he needs. He's got everything physically that you want, and he's got that ball hockey mentality. I think that ultimately it's just going to be more of learning the defensive scheme, and who knows what's going to happen with Gus Bradley and how they affect him there. I know that I've heard the secondary coach for the Raiders might be potentially coming with him. We'll see how that affects him as well. I mean, they've had a good relationship with that, and they've developed some good talent with those schemes. Julian Blackmon, I think is going to break out even more than what we saw his rookie year.
I think so too. I mean, the guy that they're bringing, I think his last name's Milas, however you pronounce it. He's probably one of the best DBs coaches in the league. I mean, he's coached guys that are phenomenal players. He's coached guys like Eric Weddle, like Jason Verrett, like Derwin James, Casey Hayward, just to name a few. So he's got a really good resume, and I think he's just going to do great for all these DBs. I think they're going to all take a step in the right direction. So, yeah, I mean, I fully expect Julian Blackmon, if he can stay healthy, he's going to be a guy that's going to break out this year. I really believe he's going to.
All right, let's go to the next one here, and that is Danny Pinter, the 5th-round pick out of Ball State. Now, the reason we kind of have this one, and if you've been listening to the podcast at all over the last few weeks, you know that Cody and I have mentioned several times about the Colts potentially trading one of their offensive linemen in replacement for Danny Pinter. And we've seen Danny Pinter play this year. We saw him this year take over for Ryan Kelly, who was out for several weeks this season for personal reasons and for COVID as well. And Danny Pinter rose to the occasion. And when Ballard stated, Danny Pinter was one of his favorite picks of that draft because he said, we're debating moving up into the 4th round to go and get this guy because I was afraid that we were going to lose him. And sure enough, Danny Pinter's shown you, the versatility of a guy like him. He can play on the outside. He can play on the inside. Heck, he can be a receiver for you if you want to. We saw that a little bit this year. So, you see a versatile guy in Danny Pinter, and you think from the praise that he has gotten from Ballard and this upper management and everything they've tried to do to get him involved, I think it's to a point where you start saying, Danny Pinter might be a starter for this team going forward. I truly believe it, and I think that that's going to result in him breaking out and being one of those guys because we're seeing it. We're seeing him get better. We're seeing him get more play time, and we're seeing him rise to the occasion amongst these great offensive linemen that are currently on this roster right now. I think it's Danny Pinter's time.
I mean, I do too. I feel like, he's reached the point of his level of play where you can feel confident and comfortable moving one of your offensive linemen, which is crazy to say. I would not have even I thought if you would have said that to me last year, I would have thought you're crazy. But that just speaks to how well Danny Pinter has been played. You're right. I mean, I think he definitely deserves more consideration as a starter somewhere. I really do. I know some people have talked about, maybe I know there's been the debate like Glowinski or Chris Reed. Some people have said, don't bring either of them back. Have Danny Pinter be your right guard. He's played so well. I think he almost deserves a starting spot. Kind of like how when Chris Reed started filling in for Glowinski or for Quentin Nelson, I should say, and people were saying he's too good. You can't keep him off the field. And then you started to see him get a little bit more snaps at right guard when Quentin Nelson came back. I mean, the same's true with Danny Pinter. He's played so well for the Colts in spot duty that I think if he gets the opportunity to be a full-time starter, he's going to be a really good one.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to see if Pinter gets that starting role at some point because, he's going to be the cheaper option. He's a guy with not much downside, and you really like what you've got in him. Let's go to the guy who was drafted right after him, and that is cornerback Isaiah Rodgers, 6th-round pick from UMass. We were talking about it right before the show, Cody, talking about, looking back on that pick now, and you're starting to see the risk of that pick versus the reward you're getting now is actually tremendous given the fact that he's a 6th-round corner, right? We're talking about it and we're saying, how does a guy that runs a 4.3 be able to slip this far down despite anything, just having that speed the way Isaiah Rodgers is? And you're seeing it now. You're seeing Isaiah Rodgers has really dialed in at the corner position and is using those physical traits that he has to full advantage. You certainly hope to a point that as he develops, and you hope that the Colts are able to get a secondary guy that can come in and help develop him that way. And from what it sounds like Miles might be coming in, it sounds like he might be the guy to help with Isaiah Rodgers at that point. It's one of those things where Isaiah Rodgers, if he develops in the cornerback position, then with that physical attributes, I mean, it makes total sense that Isaiah Rodgers is a big, big breakout guy this year.
Yeah, and people will argue and say, well, he already broke out last year. Well, he still was splitting time with Xavier Rhodes, right? He still wasn't necessarily a starter, So I think now with Xavier Rhodes presumably gone, this is Isaiah Rodgers' time to be a full-time starter. It's finally his time now after 2 seasons to be the guy at corner. And I think physically he's got everything you're looking for. Obviously, he's got the speed. He's got the ball skills. He can do just about everything for you. So, yeah, Isaiah Rodgers is the guy that I love. I cannot believe it's crazy. It's kind of funny. Like Ballard traded. If you remember, that was a Quincy Wilson trade. He traded Quincy Wilson for that pick. And then he went and got a corner. That's exactly what Quincy Wilson wasn't. A guy that is actually consistent and a guy that's is very, very underrated. And Quincy Wilson was just almost the complete opposite of that. He was, a high round pick and he just never worked out. He was always up and down. And Isaiah Rodgers has just made us completely forget about Quincy Wilson. And that's a great thing.
Yeah, because Isaiah Rodgers doesn't care about covering grass. He cares about covering everybody, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember.
Exactly.
All right, last guy here that we'll talk about. And this guy was a undrafted free agent third-year player, and that is Rodrigo Blankenship, Hot Rod. So everyone's still been having a debate, on whether or not the Colts, stretched on giving Blankenship the key when it came to this position. There's still a lot of questions about whether or not Blankenship can be consistent enough to be that guy, and everybody's still kind of questioning his leg strength, which I find very odd. But either way, Blankenship been dealing with injuries. Obviously, this last year, first year had a good year, but wasn't quite up to the standard that you want an NFL kicker to be at. I think this could be the year that Blankenship says, it's time that I take this a little bit more serious, and it's time that I, take over this position and show the Colts why they took a chance on me. And I think that this could be the year Hot Rod finally gets his mojo back.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing very well before that injury in the Baltimore game. But yeah, it's so weird, man. Like, we talk all the time about the quarterback carousel the Colts have had over the last couple of years, but one that we don't really talk about is the kicking carousel the Colts have had over the last couple of years as well. It's been kind of rough, man, with Vinatieri dropping off the way he did, with Chase McLaughlin, with Rodrigo Blankenship, with and there's so many other guys as well that were in the mix for that. So it's about time to just figure out your kicking positions. You figured out every other position on your special teams. It's time to figure out what in the world are we going to do about our kicker? Let's stop having this be a discussion in the offseason every single offseason.
Right.
Let's figure it out, man. Let's just figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for those ones, guys. We didn't mention Michael Pittman or Jonathan Taylor because obviously they broke out this year. And a couple other guys that we didn't mention just because, they might have broken out as well. So we don't need to worry about that. And if anyone's going to comment about Sam Ellinger, don't. All right. I'm just saying, don't. Okay. Don't waste your time. Don't waste another 10 seconds, 15, 20 seconds, however long it takes you to make that comment. Don't make the comment. It's not worth your time. Okay. Yeah, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Let us know if there's anyone that you thought we missed. Is there anyone else that you thought is going to break out that we didn't mention or did mention but don't think they will? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Again, thank you guys so much for the continued support. Hope you enjoyed. And as always, go Colts.